Your sales team is going to love you if they're able to talk to well-educated and validated customer prospects before they're bringing them in through the sales process. Customer education can help any business's bottom line. I guarantee you, you're going to see the impact. And if you don't, call me. Anyone can create content. Not everyone can be an educator.
That is a very important distinction.
If you want to activate your customers, if you want to do retention at scale, if you want to generate the highest dollar retention for every customer you bring in, you have to educate them. Customer education and learning is still going to be around for the next 100 years in businesses around the world. Learning is learning. Like, if you can get your hands on it, do it. Whatever that looks like. Not everyone has access to the types of educational institutes that a lot of businesses for a long time deemed the good ones. Yeah. Being a leader in learning means that we are bringing that equity to the market to make sure everyone has the opportunity to learn. We're all adult learners. We really need you to cut to the chase. Like, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
Like, we learn best when we talk and share ideas. That's what I love about that social learning element. People who learn together grow together. Oh, I have tons of words of wisdom. I could go on quite a bit about this. I will start, though, in a place that is not always popular to start.
Hello, and welcome to Leaders in Learning. I'm Shauna David, and today I'm sitting down with Courtney Sembler. Now, Courtney was recently named one of the top 25 people in customer education, and she holds the coveted status of top leadership development voice on LinkedIn. And for good reason. She's helped build an incredible ecosystem of education offerings as Director of HubSpot Academy. Courtney oversees a global team responsible for one of the most successful external education offerings. Her work has influenced the careers of millions of marketing professionals and entrepreneurs. And you can bet she's picked up a thing or two about leading and learning along the way. So let's jump in. Hi, Courtney. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to chat with you. I'm very glad that you are joining us here on Leaders in Learning. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about, and I want to start with some of the massive impact your programs at HubSpot are having. I have heard 950,000 users, 200,000 people have gotten certified. And personally, I know several people from my network who were able to land their dream job or get into the workforce because they had a HubSpot certification.
I love when we start with that, because that's so much of the purpose of the team, which is we want to give people opportunities to get started with their career, jumpstart it, accelerate, or go back to careers that they didn't have before, right? So many of our, certified learners are, I was in sales and then, I really liked marketing. So I took your cert and I switched careers in and shifted gears. And so today, a few of the things that we pull out is 500,000 people are certified right now actively in HubSpot Academy. That is close to over 1 million people who have ever been certified with HubSpot Academy. And that also is inclusive of HubSpot customers, partners, users, and students in the classroom. HubSpot Academy certs are taught in the classroom at universities around the world. And they can use those certifications for college credit. So if they're certified, they can get credit with their university, and which honestly also helps the price of college, right, for some of those folks, which is amazing. All of that aside, HubSpot also sees a ton of value from those certifications, from that learning, from the platform, getting people started. Our sales team uses it, getting people excited during that sales process. And our customers use it day to day, learn about the software, the products. HubSpot's changing every day. And so to keep up with all of that is a lot.
It's a lot of effort for all of those different audiences. It's super great that you've got this really flexible content strategy that's able to meet people no matter where they are. And I appreciate that that's been a real source of product adoption, customer engagement, partner engagement from a business perspective. But I'm also curious, in your role as a director of the Academy, I'm thinking about what you talked about with those students and the education industry in general. And I'm curious, are you noticing that the amazing stuff that private sector companies are doing, like HubSpot, and changing the way education is consumed, the way that people navigate and deal with it? What does that mean for educational institution? Is it rendering them a bit obsolete potentially?
It's such a great question. And the way I love to answer it is learning is learning. If you can get your hands on it, do it. Whatever that looks like. If that's in higher ed, if that's a high school program, learning is such an important element of everyone's day-to-day lives. What we really focus on is not everyone has access to the types of educational institutes that a lot of businesses for a long time deemed the good ones or what they wanted to see on a resume. And what we're trying to help and collaborate with those universities on is, can we fill the gaps? You know, hey, University X, you're not going to be able to invest in a large scale marketing program or digital marketing. Let us take care of that. And you really focus your curriculum on these other elements.
So how do you navigate that, like, slow moving, for lack of a better term, really rigid educational infrastructure with this like fast paced SaaS company that wants to infuse all this new curriculum? Have you learned any lessons from navigating that like total juxtaposition between orgs?
A ton. The Education Partner Program, which is the official title of the program we use with universities, has been around for the last couple of years, and we really work with the professors, the ones that are doing the teaching themselves. And that's usually our window in. We work with them, we bring them into our education as well. You'll see them in Academy certs and Academy courses. And then they teach it in their classroom, and their students are like, oh my goodness, like my professor's cool, for lack of a better term, right? They're in this high profile, high, moving company, and we're partnering with them. One of the other learnings too is higher ed has still so much value from a social element, right? Yeah. We're not replacing going to a classroom, going to a campus and learning about what it's like to live with other people, live in a dorm room. Like we're not trying to make that obsolete. Right. And that's not what we're in the business for. What we want to make sure is for the student who can't do that, they still have the same equitable experience in getting the education that's going to get them ahead. And students who went to college later on in life, right? A lot of our students that go through certifications are not the early 20s. Oh, I'm right now in the mix. They're on their third, fourth career, right, and they're just trying to keep pace. Right. And that's what we really want to target with those universities.
Well, even just in the field of marketing, I think back to early 2010s when digital marketing was starting to be a craft, especially a lot of legacy companies. And I think about those folks that now need to reinvest in their skills.
Yes. And that's also, outside of the universities, one of the things that we've really targeted is those companies of like, get everyone at your company certified. We, in April, had our World Certification Week.
That's right, yeah.
It's the 5th time that we have done that. And the target of that is, spend a week learning. It started out as a day, and then we're like, well, we actually have too many certifications for that. So let's start with a week.
Okay.
And hopefully one day it'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month of getting folks to dedicate that time to learning. There's a charitable component, right? For everyone who gets certified that week, we donate $5 to organizations that are focused on getting kids in particularly underrepresented groups access to education, whether in the United States, in the global South, and across Europe and Asia. And so there's that component, but then it's also, you might have fallen behind a little bit with some of sales skills, digital marketing. Right. Use this week as a company to bring that back and do it in a way that's fun. We love to say people who learn together grow together. And that's such a core component of HubSpot Academy.
I love that you're thinking across the world, you're thinking about different companies, and that like learn together. Do you find that people are creating community and relationships, even if they're from different companies, through things like Certification Week?
100%. It's all over LinkedIn. People are like, I got certified in this, and someone's congratulating them and is like, oh, so did I, we should talk. And we've been using like our online platforms like community.com and connect.com to facilitate that, right, but it happens really naturally. You see it on LinkedIn. You even see it in person sometimes. Okay. People will have HubSpot Academy stickers, and we give them badges for World Cert Week. And I've been there when 2 people are like, oh, I got certified. You did too? Oh my goodness. Like, let's be friends. And it's a little bit to go back to that university analogy of when you meet someone who also went to your undergrad, or they were in your MBA program, or you took one class one time with them. You have a bond.
You do, yeah.
You learn something similar at the same time, and you both had different experiences with it. And that's what I love about that social learning element.
It's so powerful. I think the social learning, it reinforces memory. I think there's an element of learning. You cannot be learning unless you're open to being vulnerable. Right. And that like shared vulnerability as 2 humans trying to figure something out together is super bonding and tight.
And that's also the bond that the learners have with our inbound professors, the people who are teaching those certifications and those courses. They go out in the world and like, I want to meet Kyle Jepsen. I want to connect with Jory or Drithi. I want to meet Juanita in person. And when they do, it is this immediate, I've learned so much from you. You've changed the way that I think about my job. And that isn't something you get when you don't have passionate educators involved.
That's right.
You know, our inbound professors want to be there for you. They want to connect with you on LinkedIn and hear about your success.
I appreciate you sharing, and shout out to all of those professors that Courtney just called out. Clearly, you're doing killer work. There's something to be said when I think about the programs that you offer. You've mentioned, like, there's a ton of options. Yeah. There's tons of optionality, whether it's in person, in class. And one of the things that I think many of us hear a lot about is decreasing attention spans. CNN did a study recently that said attention spans have gone from a couple minutes to like 47 seconds.
I know.
Do you believe that? Is that true?
I mean, I love those studies. They're great. And I think in general, TikTok, et cetera, has really brought us into I need it now and I need it quickly. Now, there is the other sort of, not belief or research, but also if you are dedicated to something, you're going to invest your time. And I think that's not where we're focusing. We're like, oh, our attention spans have decreased. Right. But I would ask you, like, when was the last time that you spent 4 hours reading a book because you were really into it? Like, if you're committed, that's where your attention is going to be held. And so one of the ways that we think about that is, yes, you need snackable content. You need quick content, particularly when you're talking about products and you just need to get started. Great. There's room for that.
Right.
And at the same time, you need to make sure the value prop, why someone is going to go through a boot camp, a certification is there for them to want to invest the time. We're all adult learners. We really need you to cut to the chase. Like, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
Like, am I going to get something great, mediocre, or is it not worth my time?
Well, and just be transparent at the top. To your point, are you looking for a specific piece of information to, like, move the widget, get the thing done, versus building skills? And I think you are right to say that there's such a habit related to, if you were invested in building a skill, that 10,000 hours, Michael Jordan, like, we all have heard this. And that's one of the things I'd like you to just talk a little bit about, how you've brought together that, like, snackable content, but it doesn't end in the snack. You're actually stacking the right snacks together, so you're having a fulfilling meal, you're having a thorough learning experience and walking away with something, maybe it's a new skill or you're honing a skill. So how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, it's, you know, there's sort of two elements to it. One is the way that the experience is built, right? Okay. We have an incredible product team that builds our Academy app. And one of the things that we learned early on is when we started doing modular content. So I'm going to take this snackable video over here, but it's actually connected to this larger piece of content over there. I want credit for watching it in the snackable version when I go to the bigger thing.
Yes.
And you're starting to build that momentum. And then you get to this lesson or this course and you're like, oh, whoa, I've taken half of this already. Might as well finish it, take the exam, get that credit. Again, a little bit of gamification, right?
Right.
We want to finish things. We want that reward at the end. So there's a product element of it. The second piece is really getting into what we just talked about, which is the why. Why are you going to do something? How is it going to look? And what is it going to mean for me? And so when we've thought about structuring our content that way, our professors really go back to the start with learning outcomes and learning objectives, and do that process of, all right, who's my persona? What do they need from this? And setting that expectation up front for everyone when they view that content, view the trailer, et cetera. And then some of the fun part of it has also been, how do we make that social element really, like, front and center when that person comes into the content? So we have disclaimers at the beginning of every course. Grab a friend, grab a colleague. Who are you going to learn with? Who's going to be your accountability buddy, right? Who is going to make this experience for you? And if it's us, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Let us know you're starting a course and start to get that process in there. And then a little bit to your question about how do we kind of bring all that together, we spent a lot of time talking as a team about the different types of content we're doing. So from micro-learning to boot camps to certifications, we want to be connecting the dots internally so that when we take it to market, we're able to explain, oh, you took the video, you got excited, now you're in the cert, now you're doing the boot camp, and it makes sense because the person who created the small video, the boot camp, and the cert all talks about it internally.
Right. Well, and you mentioned something around that, like breadcrumb. So I took the video, and maybe 6 months later, I enroll in the certification. But you've clearly built the right like data and operability to be able to have a relevant experience that follows the learner.
Yeah.
So that's not easy. Most companies have struggled to do a little bit of that. And you guys have done it extremely well. So I want to just like be a bit selfish for our practitioners watching. And if there's stuff, Courtney, that you messed up when you were starting the academy, there's stuff that you learned that can help a practitioner who is building from scratch potentially, or maybe even trying to convince their organization that there's big potential for profit in education, maybe give us a bit of words of wisdom.
Oh, I have tons of words of wisdom. I could go on quite a bit about this. I will start, though, in a place that is not always popular to start.
Okay.
If you are thinking about localization,
yes,
stop thinking and start doing. Because it doesn't matter when you do it, it's painful. And if you don't start from the beginning, you're always going to be playing catch up. We only started localizing our certifications in 2019.
Wow.
And that HubSpot Academy had been around since 2012 at that point. The amount of backlog we had, it doesn't matter. You'd have to stop creating content for years to catch up. And that's not great. Like, we're a global company, we're global institutions. We should be thinking global first. And so I think the mistake that I find myself going back to in that is we weren't thinking global. We were thinking about how we're solving problems, which is great, but it was problems for like our North American audience or the customers we knew. And all of a sudden, when we started to peel that onion back of, well, what does Latin America need, or Japan? I was like, oh, we have a problem. Right. This is going to take a long time. And a lot of it came down to, well, what do we need to do? What's the business need? All that good stuff. But the foundations of how we were creating content had to change. Because we were localizing. We can't go and use a metaphor about something that is very well known in the United States and not so well known in Germany. The images we were using, all of that stuff started to come up and pretty much put us back of like, all right, what are the fundamentals of how we're creating education? And so I always start there. If you're thinking about it, just do it. Like, jump in. It's hard no matter what. It's expensive and it's a difficult process. You might as well at least give yourself some runway on it. The second piece of that, though, really does come down to like the best practices of creating education. I think a lot of people get stuck in where we are today of like, well, anyone can create content. Anyone can, with their phone, pick it up and start creating content. True. That is very different than creating educational assets and experiences that take someone from point A to point B. And if you don't have that philosophy, that framework, it's going to be really difficult to get the momentum you're looking for and also the buy-in. Because when you go to your CEO or your CMO and you're like, we're going to create content, they're like, everyone at this company creates content. It's 2024 or 2025. Like, everyone.
Have you heard of TikTok?
Right.
Or Instagram or
like,
whatever. Yeah.
We have an entire YouTube team that's creating content. Yeah. What makes your program different? Well, if you want to activate your customers, if you want to do retention at scale, if you want to generate the highest dollar retention for every customer you bring in, you have to educate them. And that comes from a strong understanding of what does it mean to educate someone? What is the outcome you want from them? And so when we were way back at the beginning and creating content and starting to scale it particularly, we first did a lot of live content, which is very much repeatable, but it's very time intensive. You got to have a person show up at a time, speaking one language or another. And when we moved into the on-demand space and we started to scale and create certifications, et cetera, it really came down to what's our framework here? Is it documented? So if someone leaves the team, can someone else come in and do it the same way? And we had a lot of like start and stops there. We had Kristen Granara, who came on. She was our first like learning and development specialist. And she looked at all of our exam data and was like, what are you doing? She was like, there's 5 exam questions that are the same and all across, and you didn't centralize it? I mean, she just looked at us like, what are you, like, come on. And I think that's a really underrated thing that people miss documentation and central databases to collect your content, the status of it, who initially created it and why and where and when. Like, all of those things need to come together. And if you have that, then you can scale as quickly as you want. And that's, I would say, if I could go back and tell myself a few things, it'd be like, get started now with bringing in multiple languages. Make sure we're documenting everything, even if it's bare bones, even if it's a spreadsheet with like 5 columns. Like, that's a huge step in the right direction. And then make sure when you're talking to people around the company and you're thinking about it, you know that you're leading with the education first, not the content first, because everyone can be a content creator. Not everyone can be an educator. Not everyone wants to be either. You know, when you start to talk about people internally, they're like, I want to create a TikTok video. I probably don't want to create a like 6-hour certification.
That is a very important distinction.
Yes.
And one that's often misunderstood, because we, just as humans, we get our information in all of the ways today, more so than previously. When you talk about education with these folks, one of the things I found to be successful, and I'm wondering if you've had any similar success, is the language around performance. Because education has a bit of a light perception to it. It's not really considered as a business driver, but when you can speak to the impact of education as it relates to the performance of your business, the performance of your employees, the new thing they will be able to do as a result, to your earlier point, I think that's like when the money literally and metaphorically can come to the table.
When it also becomes the connector. And so a lot of the way we've talked about it at HubSpot is HubSpot Academy ends up being the thing that follows you no matter where you are in the customer journey, and even in the buyer's journey, right? Even before you're in the door as a HubSpot customer, you're getting certified, you're being shown educational content, and you start to create that bond, that connection that, oh, when I have a question, or I'm excited about something, or I'm not exactly sure how that looks, I'm going to the Academy. And you're creating that positive reinforcement. And so one of the ways years and years ago we started talking about it was, all right, what are all those major milestones? Onboarding is always a big one. Activation, that first year renewal, all of those things where we typically put a human, right? You send an email, you book a meeting, you try to get face-to-face with that customer.
Right.
We've really leaned on Academy to be that supporter. And it's not always a replacement from that human interaction, but it supports that human in that. Oh, this person recently got certified. Awesome. What did you take away? What was confusing? What are you still looking to learn for? Is a much better conversation starter than, what questions do you have? Because they might not know what questions they have. We don't know what we don't know, and Academy can really be that connector.
And you can't scale a human at all of the moments that matter for a customer journey. As fantastic as humans are, it's just not realistic. And there's an inconsistency in the customer experience too that can come if you're expecting a large workforce to meet every customer, every interaction.
In every language, in every country. Like, you start to add that nuance in, and it can be, we talk so much about this at HubSpot, which is, digital by default, created by humans. There's still a human there. Someone still thought about, what did a customer need at this point? Okay, based off the data that we've looked at, this is the right course, or this is the right collection of lessons. Like, there's still a human touch there. And that's why our professors are so great, because they fill that gap. They've got this personality, this warmth, this human, helpful, holistic way of approaching education that our customers don't necessarily feel like they don't have human interaction.
So it sounds like a perfect blend. And I suspect when you talked about documentation being one of the critical factors of the success, having a central repo, one source of truth, the feedback that you're getting from those instructors back to that, so they can make all of the bits within your program better, is probably something that's been really powerful for you and your teams.
And one example that I'll share is,
please,
a couple years ago, we were really struggling to get Academy product content sort of in the places of the product, right? We wanted it to be linked. We wanted it to be surfaced by our product team and serviced by our product marketing team. And the feedback we kept getting from them is well, it's out of date. Your content is great, but it's a version, 2 or 3 ago. And trying to keep pace with all the updates was really hard. And so what we did was we're all right, well, what do we need to know about the product to keep the content up to date? And what is a standard we want to set for ourselves, right? What's a bar? And so we uploaded every single piece of educational content we had live into a central database. We manually put a status to it and an owner, and then we tagged it with what products were mentioned in that video. Granular detail, like
That's very exciting.
is it the CRM and the deal and the pipeline? What is it? And then what we did in collaboration with our product marketing and product team was we pumped in their notifications. So when a product changed, they send out a notification. And the database, what it did was the notification came in and it was tagged with the product, which matched our tagging system. Those two talked to each other and it gave you a list of the potential pieces of content that were going to go out of date. And so our professors are no longer wondering, oh yeah, I heard about that product. I don't know if it updated. You take out the ambiguity and you say, all right, these 5 lessons might be impacted. It's much easier to audit 5 lessons than the entire database every time the product changes.
The downstream impact too, I'm thinking about other roles that we haven't talked a lot about, but like your frontline customer facing team members. Now all of a sudden they're not behind the 8 ball because your team is able to proactively see all that stuff.
Yes.
Courtney, I have been really fascinated about like your story because it is very rare that people stay in companies for as long as you have. No knock to companies, but it's just not something as common as it was in our parents' generation. Was it intentional?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I know it was not intentional. Like there's been a lot of trying things, failing, going and doing something else. And my career has been one that I think matches my personality, which is very much, I'm very passionate and I just love to jump into things. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I like to say I don't take myself too seriously. Like if it hadn't worked out this way, then I think I would have found something else that I'm equally as passionate about. But I did start my career in the environmental nonprofit space. So very different from where I am today.
I get the vibe that confidence, dedication, passion, these are all things that are superpowers that have helped propel your career. And so I'm curious, when you look back and you think about where you started, where you are, what advice do you have for women specifically who maybe not aren't comfortable to go back to look for a yes after getting a no?
I love that question because it's so much of it is who you are as a person. And I think that's a philosophy I've taken a lot with the internal politics. Like a no can be a no and you can sort of put your tail between your legs and walk away from it. Or you can take it as not yet, or maybe something else, and keep your eyes and ears really to the ground about it. And also build that relationship with the person who's saying no. Oftentimes when we hear no, it's because that person doesn't trust us enough. They don't know us enough to take a chance on us. How you navigate that is going to be very different. But any type of person, any woman that you are, you can. And it's just finding the way in which you're going to do it. And I think my biggest advice is find people around you that you feel comfortable asking questions to, because that's so much of what it's going to be. Hey, this person gave me this feedback, or they said no, what do I do? And having that sounding board. I like to call it my own personal board of directors.
Okay.
And so I like to have different people on my board, and I check in with them periodically about how I'm doing and what I'm feeling. And that can be mentors, that can be friends, that can be old bosses, or even ones that you want to be a boss in the future. Oh, I really want to work for you. Can I meet with you once a month, once a quarter to ask you questions about what it's going to take me to get to the next level? And part of that sort of sub-advice is just talking about it. I think so much of our journey, when we navigate our career, we look inward. We journal, we talk about it in the mirror.
We write a list.
Right. But we don't vocalize it. And there's so much power in saying what you want and putting it, that manifestation, and putting it out there, but also telling somebody else. I tell you, I'm really looking for my next opportunity. I'm really looking to be a manager. You're in a conversation with someone else about a manager role. You now know that's what I'm interested in.
Right.
And you're going to speak my name in that room, particularly if we have a good relationship.
So it's not only the manifestation in your corner where you're safe and protected. You actually have to take the risk and get out there. Say the words in public. you're making me think of one of my favorite Jim Carrey movies called Yes Man.
Yes.
And he spends a year just saying yes. And this character's life changes drastically. And I think you have similar thoughts. I have creeped a blog that you wrote a while back about how this like saying yes to things just can open wild doors.
It's so funny because we often limit ourselves in that. We're like, oh, we have to say yes to the right thing. And it's a little bit of like a funny analogy, but when you think about your dating history, you said yes to other people before you settled down. And that taught you something.
Right.
It gave you what you like and what you don't like. And if you only say yes to things you think you're going to like, you actually do yourself a disservice. I once did a role at HubSpot. It was sort of like a sub role to what I was doing, where all I did was answer email deliverability questions for our customers 24/7 in a Slack channel. And I can't tell you how I use that today, but I can tell you I learned things about myself, the way I work, the way I like to work by doing that. I also got connected with someone who's now one of my biggest advocates outside of HubSpot. And I would say I'm one of her biggest advocates. And so you make connections, you learn something, even if you don't apply it to the next role or even ever again. What you learn in those moments, and I would say in those micro moments, it doesn't have to be a whole new job. It doesn't have to be a whole new thing. It can just be, you know what, I'm going to spend 5 minutes a day doing this other thing. Even if it gets me nowhere in the short term, what I learn from it is something that's really going to take me far. It's compound interest, right? The more you learn, the more it can help you. There are things that I've discovered that I'm good at that I don't particularly like, but that's helpful, right? And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm great at organizing an agenda. Cool. That's probably not going to help me become a VP one day. However, it's a really useful skill that got me ahead in being the person that is seen as being organized or being supportive. There's just different things that you can really bring into it, even if it's not something that, again, helps you tomorrow.
I am so glad that we got to spend a little bit of time talking today about all of the things around HubSpot Academy, about you and the advice that you have for folks in this industry. Your passion and excitement for education and helping others, it just shines through. So thank you so much. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share? Any things that, words of wisdom?
I think the thing that I would leave with is the customer education space, education as a whole, has such this moment right now with customer success and going digital, and don't sleep on it. Like, it has been around for a long time. The first book about customer education was written in the 1980s. This isn't something that is new. We've been through this a few times. And leaders, particular CEOs, they're not always bought in. There's still a little bit of that hesitation because it's not AI. It's not the new fancy thing. But the impact it has is so incredible on your bottom line. And there's so many different ways to test it. It doesn't have to be HubSpot Academy. It doesn't have to be a Salesforce trailhead. It can be just pieces of those that's just right for your customers. And so I think what I would say, and the challenge I'd leave people with is give it a chance, give it an opportunity, get some really smart people at your company that know your customers really well, and get them start creating education. And I guarantee you're going to see the impact. And if you don't, call me.
Thank you, Courtney. It was a pleasure. I appreciate your time and your wisdom and your care for all the things related to education. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much.